Good evening, everybody. Before this video gets started, I just wanted to take a minute to thank you all so much for the kind words and supportive messages and Merry Christmas wishes yesterday. It meant a lot to me, and I really appreciate all of you guys. It's an amazing outpouring of support, and you're all wonderful people. I want you all to know that. And so, with that said, we're gonna go ahead and move into playing this deck today. So I ran into a person playing a list similar to this, and somebody, and I don't remember who because it's been a few days, and I'm sorry, I've been meaning to play this for a couple of Mad Meta Magics, but I keep forgetting. Somebody mentioned that this was Aspiring Spike's list, so I went up and I looked, I went over to Aspiring Spike, and I found... Sorry, I'm trying to do too many things at once. I was trying to refocus the camera. And anyway, I found this list. This is one of the lists he played recently. I think this deck is super cool because it's kind of a control-y deck, but it's also this weird Jeskai ramp deck. And it also plays Nexus of Fate. And it plays Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, which is one of my favorite planeswalkers of all time. Man, do you remember when this was the broken Teferi and not the 3-mana version? Anyway, okay. Recollecting my thoughts here. So the purpose of this deck is, number one, this deck plays Lotus Field. And it plays a lot of combos with Lotus Field. So if you play Lotus Field on turn 3, you can Tail's End the sacrifice trigger, and then you effectively played 3 lands as a tap land instead of just 1 land per turn. You also play Blood Sun, which by itself can hose a couple of random lands, but it also allows Lotus Field to enter untapped, and you don't have to sacrifice lands, and it itself cantrips. But it helps deal with some of the broken Valakut, Omnath, Uro shenanigans, Field of the Dead, which I like. It also plays Cleansing Wildfire, because the deck plays Flagstones of Trocaire. Now, Flagstones of Trocaire is another card that, if you sacrifice it to Lotus Field, you only sacked 1 land instead of 2. You can Cleansing Wildfire your own Flagstones to ramp quickly. It's a very strong card, just in general. So the purpose of this deck is that you're trying to play this control deck that gets ahead on mana, and since you're in Modern, you're not playing reactive control so much. Like, you can play Cryptic Commands, but we're not playing Mystic Sanctuary because we play so many non-island lands. So there's no like infinite Cryptic Lock or anything like that. We just ramp to a really big threat, which is Teferi. We try and Shark Typhoon our opponent out of the game, and we also play Nexus of Fate. Out of the sideboard, we have Madcap Experiment Platinum Empyrean, which I'm a big fan of. We have a bunch of Aether Gusts, another Tail's End if we find it's relevant. Like versus Tron, where a lot of the threats are legendary, Tail's End can be very good. We also have a Narset Parter of Veils. Presumably to hose other control-y decks. So I think that's enough rambling and a quick explanation of what's actually going on here in this very strange-looking list. Let's go ahead and take this into a Modern League and see if we can make the Magic meta mad. Or if the Magic meta is going to make Kano mad. Oh, hang on. Let me make sure I'm playing the right deck here. Paranoia. Okay, cool. I'll see you guys in round 1. Alrighty, round 1. Here we go. I have no idea how to play this deck, and I didn't play any practice matches, so I want this first match to be tempered with that expectation. I tend to do this a lot, and I would play some test matches, but I don't really have a lot of time today. After all, it is late on Christmas. Everything Christmas-related that needed to happen happened. So I have returned from the journey to my brother's house. Yeah, I'm going to try keeping this. We have turn 1 Serum Visions to try and sculpt our hand a little bit, and turn 2 Flagstones into Cleansing Wildfire to ramp. I do like that. I think it'd be nice to maybe draw a big Teferi. Second Flagstones is okay. I like Valakut Awakening because we can cycle so many cards at one time, but I think we put both of these cards on the bottom. Pass the turn. The other cool thing about Cleansing Wildfire is it's a rampant growth that cantrips when you target the right land. Alright, opponent plays a Marsh Flats into a Mishra's Bauble. It would appear we are against Lurrus Death Shadow. They crack Bauble. Okay, opponent fetches and shocks a Blood Crypt, then draws off of their first Bauble. We draw Tail's End. Oh, wow. Okay, so we are going to have so much mana. I am going to go for the proactive play of Cleansing Wildfire our own flagstones here. If we get Thought Seized and our opponent takes Tail's End, and we don't have the ability to Tail's End our Lotus Field trigger, so we get a basic land. So we're going to get an island. Flagstones goes off. We draw another Lotus Field. Flagstones goes off, and we're going to get Raugrin Triome. Then we're going to pass. If my opponent takes Lotus Field, we're going to play another Flagstones of Trocaire first, which makes the Lotus Field way less punishing to play. Okay, opponent fetches and shocks another Blood Crypt into a Scourge of the Skyclades. We untap, we draw Cryptic Command. I could play Flagstones and Cryptic Bounce Scourge. I could also Serum Visions, Snapcaster Serum Visions. I think we're going to try and draw a Lightning Bolt here. Draw Valakut Awakening. There is a Path to Exile on top. So Snapcaster to the bottom, Path to the top, play Flagstones. We could try flashing Snapcaster to block, but I think it's better to just have him on board now. Plus we're drawing Path and not Bolt. Path is a pretty good answer to Scourge. So we draw Path, Plains Cleansing Wildfire to the bottom. Pass the turn. So opponent untaps. They like 100% have removal for a Snapcaster here. If not, we shouldn't take that much damage unless our opponent can bolt us. Okay, opponent attacks with Scourge. We're going to block. Opponent likely will bolt us here to get the Scourge large enough to kill it, or they have a what's it called? The Teamer Battle Rage. That's the card I'm trying to get out of here. All right. So opponent Thought Seizes us. They definitely take Path, like 100%. Okay, that is unfortunate. So we just bottomed a Snapcaster too. Maybe I should have put Snap on top. Okay, opponent shocks Blood Crypt. We untap. Draw an island. I don't think Tail's End is gonna do enough. There's a decent chance I die. I could play Valakut Awakening tapped, but I think the front half of Valakut Awakening is gonna be more important. Because there's cards we need to draw to actually do anything here. I think I'm gonna play Island this turn. And then we're gonna pass. I'm probably going to have to use Cryptic just as a fog, and I'm not a big fan of that. Okay, opponent plays a Marsh Flats. They go to combat. They attack with Scourge. I'm going to try taking the 5 here. We have Cryptic to react to whatever our opponent could play. Yeah, I'm not going to Tail's End that. They fetch and shock. We take 5, go to 10. So Scourge is now a 10-10. They're going to play Kroxa. So if I counter Kroxa and bounce Scourge, that does nothing. So Kroxa enters the battlefield. We're going to discard Tail's End so we don't lose any more life. Okay, opponent loses Kroxa. I mean, the chance that we draw like Bolt, Snap, Bolt is non-zero as well. Okay, another Scourge. So we are going to counter this Scourge and bounce my opponents. Should buy us at least one turn. We untap. We draw Big Teferi. Okay. Play Big Teferi. Plus Big Teferi. We draw Snapcaster. Perfect. Wowza. Alright, we are back in this game. So Flagstones, we are going to use the ability and get another Raugrin Triome. Pass the turn, we're going to untap Lotus Field and Triome. And now we have Snapcaster Path. We don't have Snap Cryptic, unfortunately, but Snap Path is pretty good. We could also Snapcaster a Tail's End onto Kroxa if my opponent goes that route. Okay, opponent plays a Swift Spear. And they go to combat. They attack Teferi for 1. Okay, no blocks. They're going to Lightning Bolt Teferi. So let's go Snapcaster, hitting Path, and then Path Monastery Swift Spear. I could have blocked, or Or I could have tried to block, but my opponent... Maybe that would have let us save path. But there's nothing else we could really do with the mana this turn, and I think I would rather have the Snapcaster, if even just to chump for a turn. Okay, Teferi goes down to 2. The problem now is Teferi is not big enough to downtick onto Scourge. Okay, that's good. That's at least an answer if we don't draw anything else. So uptick Teferi. We draw Plains. Blue, blue, blue. White, blue. Play another copy of Teferi. Keep this one. Downtick on Scourge. And I can either play a Plains and wheel away my hand, or I can play a Lotus Field. No, I can play a Lotus Field and wheel away my hand too, because I'm untapping 2 Lotus Fields. I guess I'd have to sack, like, Steam Vents and Island if I was going to do that. That's probably the way to go. Okay. No attacks, because I want to be able to block a Swift Spear if my opponent has it. Untap our Lotus Fields. This deck is sweet. I was really, really worried. I felt like I was getting a little out of control with my plays there. But our plays were very powerful, and I'm sure there was a more optimum line than what I took there. I'm positive there is, in fact. Okay. So here I am going to Valakut Awakening. Basically as an instant speed divination. Putting back a Plains. Okay, we draw 2 lands. That's not good. Bomat Courier enters. They go to combat. If my opponent attacks Teferi, we 100% have to block. We might have to block anyway. Yeah, okay. Opponent gets to exile a card face down. So that means the top card of their deck is now a Scourge of the Skyclaves. If my opponent has a Bolt for Snap, or Push for Snapcaster, that's pretty bad, because now we lose to Fairy. Alright. That really, really sucks. We untap. We need to draw something very good. That's not what I asked for. Play Sacred Foundry tapped. Pass the turn. I think we have a Settle the Wreckage, but now my opponent is going to get a lot of cards off of Bomat Courier. Or they could just play Kroxa, and that would be a problem as well. Because Kroxa guarantees we take at least 6 damage. My opponent's last 2 cards were a creature with haste and a removal spell. So, alright. Opponent did not play Kroxa, thankfully. But they are going to put Lurrus into their hand. Oh, they sack Bomat Courier, okay. We untap, and we lose. So we drew a lot of cards there, but we just kind of bricked. I don't think that's indicative of anything wrong with this deck. Now, I'm pretty sure, I'm like 99% sure, I'm just going to go double check here really quick, that Mardu Kroxa, or what is it? Mardu Death Shadow or Rakdos Death Shadow, I'm like 99% sure that they play Kolaghan's Command. They definitely play it out of the side. I don't know if it's worth running Madcap Experiment Empyrean here. They don't have anything in the main deck that'll do it. At least not the last couple of Death Shadow lists, but they do have Angrath's Rampage and Kolaghan's Command out of the sideboard, which means if I do this in Game 2, I definitely can't in Game 3. Like, I would have to sideboard back. So now the question is, do I want to do it? I think it's good enough to try. Like I said, I'm not familiar with this deck, so I'm not 100% on the like main board, sideboard plan here. I think Lightning Bolt comes out. Because even though the Bolt is nice for reach, the majority of the time, it's not going to kill their creature, and it's not going to actually kill them either. And it's possible I want the other Settle the Wreckage here, too. Force of Negation is good, but seems a little bit questionable. Man, what do I take out in this matchup, then? If I'm siding like this, what do I do? I think I'd have to take out, like, Blood Sun, maybe? Although Blood Sun's very nice versus their fetch lands. Could cut, like, a Shark Typhoon or two, if we're not using this to win the game. I think Shark Typhoon probably still deserves a spot. I'm going to cut a Blood Sun, and I think I'm going to cut the forces here. We'll cut a Serum Visions, and a Shark Typhoon. And we'll try it like this. I have no idea if this is correct. It probably is not. If my opponent is playing any artifact destruction in the main deck, it almost certainly is not the correct thing to do. Okay, this hand does Tail's End a Lotus Field on turn 3 and plays Madcap on turn 4, so I think I'm okay with keeping this. It's a little bit risky, because this hand folds a little bit harder to Thoughtseize. So, play Valakut Stoneforge, pass the turn. One thing I do like about this deck is its mana base is not that painful. Like, we have some shock lands, but we can choose whether or not we want to pay life for those. Opponent starts Bloodstained Mire. Into a Blood Crypt untapped. They play Bauble. They crack Bauble. And they Thoughtseize. Okay. They probably take Madcap Experiment. Or they take Tail's End. If they take Tail's End, I kind of want to top deck a Flagstones of Trocaire. If they take Madcap Experiment, I'm not sure that's really that harmful right now, because we still have time. If they take Madcap Experiment and their second land is a fetch land, I would absolutely Tail's End the trigger. I don't think I would Cleansing Wildfire my opponent in this matchup, unless they play like 2 basics. They play like 2 basics, so maybe I would. They take Cryptic, interestingly enough, which means they probably have removal for a Madcap Empyrean. Play Spirebluff Canal, pass the turn. We'll leave up Tail's End, but we want to use that on Lotus Field. I think I might have to maintain priority and hold down control when I play Lotus Field as well. Okay, opponent plays a Sunbaked Canyon. They Inquisition us. So they can take Tail's End, so that we can't just Lotus Field. That's what they do. And then they play Bombat Courier. Okay. They attack us for 1. We go to 19. Draw Raugrin Triome. I could play the Triome and Cleansing Wildfire myself just for a cantrip. Like, blow up the Stoneforge, which gives me another spell in the grave to draw with. I could also play Lotus Field and hope to draw an untapped land next turn. I could Cleansing Wildfire myself first, see what I draw before I play Lotus Field. I actually think I'm going to do that. So we will use Cleansing Wildfire's ability, we'll get an island. We draw a Spirebluff Canal. That will enter the battlefield untapped next turn, so we can play Lotus Field. Sack our other 2 lands, pass the turn. Yeah, if I get rampaged, I'm going to feel really silly about this Madcap Experiment. Or K-commanded. The good news is we're only like 2 mana off of Teferi, and that's pretty cool. Alright, opponent goes to combat, attacks us for 2. They exile a card, we go down to 18. And they play a Scourge of the Skyclaves. We draw a second Madcap Experiment. Madcap, get an Empyrean. And the good news is, if my opponent has 1 piece of artifact removal and only 1 piece, we can just Empyrean again. Our life total not being able to change is nice for Scourge of the Skyclaves. It's not quite that nice for gaining life or anything, though. I don't think we gain life anyway, though. I apologize if I seem a little bit scatterbrained today. I did have a full, long day full of board games and enjoyment of the holiday. I understand that my train of thought consciousness is not, or my stream of thought, see, it's even showing up right now, my stream of thought is not as cohesive as it normally is. And I will endeavor to correct that for the rest of this, but I only just became aware of it. So my opponent plays Mishra's Bauble, cracks Bauble. For as long as they can't find an answer to Empyrean, we're in an amazing place. Alright, opponent does not attack. We untap, our opponent draws a card, another Lotus Field. So go to combat, attack for 8. Presumably my opponent has to chump. They take 8. So play another Raugrin Triome, and let's go get a second Platinum Empyrean, just to be safe. Okay, that one was 31 cards deep. I will say for the Madcap Experiment combo, I think Empyrean is definitely the superior creature. Platinum Angel does work too, but if Platinum Angel ever dies, you lose. Platinum Angel has the upside of protecting you from your opponent playing a Thassa's Oracle or anything silly like that, but it's a lot more fragile as a creature. And if you could give it hexproof and like indestructible easily, it would be better, but or if you were playing things like Pact of Negation, I think it is better. But we have two 8/8s. Two pretty decent 8/8s, I should say. And my opponent's at 4. Opponent's going to 3. They're going to K-command, destroying 1 and making us discard. I think we got to discard Nexus of Fate. Okay. They're not attacking, because there's no reason to. We untap, we draw Settle. So go to combat. Attack for 8. Now this is a little bit awkward, because in order to hold up Settle the Wreckage in the event of my opponent having an Angrath's Rampage or something, I can't play Lotus Field. So I'm not going to. So now if my opponent has removal for the second Empyrean and then wants to attack, we have Settle the Wreckage to deal with at least one creature. I don't think we can stick with the Empyrean plan, though, for game 3. I think we have to go back to the primary game plan. Because my opponent is going to bring in whatever artifact destruction they didn't already have. Okay. So my opponent did not have removal yet. We untap. We draw a Path. Well, I guess at this point we just make them have it. Okay. Well, they had it. I'm very glad that we happen to have, number 1, 2 Madcap experiments, and number 2, kept that Lotus Field in hand. Opponent cracks Bloodstained Mire and goes to 1. I feel a little bit silly about taking out the bolts, though I didn't expect my opponent to go down quite this low. The cool thing about our current mana base right now is if we play a big Teferi and plus, we can leave up Settle the Wreckage, which I think is sweet. I hope they're out of threats right now. I can really hope they're out of threats right now. Alright, the sack Sunbaked Canyon, that's good news for us. Cleansing Wildfire we can also use as, I think, a Sinkhole. Okay, opponent plays a Monastery Swiftspear. Goes to combat. Attacks for 1. Plays another Scourge. And that's why we didn't Settle the Wreckage. Alright. I could play the Triome. I could also cycle the Triome fairly easily. I don't know that I need to get much higher than 5 mana right now, because I just want to get to Teferi. So I think what we're going to do is Settle the Wreckage this turn. And if my opponent somehow has like a Thoughtseize, I guess I would need Triome, but to cycle Triome instead. Opponent plays a Silent Clearing. They go to combat. I could try and get even greedier with the Settle the Wreckage. Although right now I'm not sure that that's necessary. I think that's all of my opponent's basics too, so I don't think they get anything out of this. My opponent has gone deep into the tank. The think tank. Okay. We've exiled their threats. Let's see what they follow up with. They put Lurrus into their hand. Alright, we untap. We draw Flagstones. Play Flagstones. Pass the turn. And in response to a Lurrus, or really anything else, I think I will cycle Raugrin Triome. Opponent sacks Silent Clearing because they're at 1. If we could draw a Tail's End to counter this Lurrus, that'd feel pretty good. Okay, we draw Steam Vents. So Lurrus resolves and my opponent can play a Bombat Courier or a Mishra's Bauble. Okay, they play Bombat Courier and get in for 1. We go to 16. They exile a card off the top of their deck. We untap. We draw Snapcaster Mage. So we can Snapcaster Settle the Wreckage, or we can Snapcaster Cryptic Command. I'm going to play Steam Vents tapped. And I think we're going to go for the Settle the Wreckage play. I could have hit Cleansing Wildfire, but that doesn't really do anything. Plus, Snapcaster Settle the Wreckage means they have to follow up with a threat, or removal on Snapcaster, because Snapcaster would be a lethal body. So my opponent plays a Bloodstained Mire, plays Mishra's Bauble, goes to combat, and attacks. Okay. So, in response to my opponent declaring attackers, and before Bombat Courier exiles a card, we are going to Snapcaster Mage, Settle the Wreckage. Okay. Snapcaster Mage's ability resolves. Cast Settle the Wreckage. So we will exile Lotus, and we will exile Bombat Courier, unless my opponent discards their hand of 5 cards to get 1 card, which they do not. Now my opponent has to play a blocker, which it's not unlikely that they have. Their entire deck is basically blockers and removal. They crack Bauble. They Fatal Push Snapcaster. Okay, we untap, they draw a card. Now if we could get a big Teferi, that would have been sweet. So, play Flagstones, thin our deck. The old painless fetch lands. We'll get a Sacred Foundry. Okay, pass the turn. Almost any card in our deck right now, except for Madcap Experiment, is a great top deck. Like, Snapcaster buys exactly what we need to answer a threat. Teferi is a way to win the game. Okay, my opponent has a Swift Spear. They get in for 1. Nexus of Fate would just be a redraw. I think our best possible top decks would be like Big Teferi plus draw Nexus of Fate. Shark Typhoon is pretty good. So on my opponent's end step, we can make a massive Shark. The only problem would be if they have another Fatal Push. Okay, opponent plays a Marsh Flats. They're drawing a lot of land that they can't use because it would literally kill them. They attack for 1. I expect my opponent has a lot of bolts in hand. I'm really thankful that all of my removal thus far is exiled, though, because, like, them being able to buy back creatures with, like, Kolagon's commands and stuff like that. Okay, opponent bolts our face. Excellent. That does lower our life total a lot, but potentially removes their ability to destroy the Shark Typhoon token with damage. Hopefully we're not dead here. I guess if my opponent has enough bolts to kill me, then that would be bad. But I think they'd need a whole play set. That is lethal -1. Okay, so on my opponent's end step, make a big ol' shark. We draw Big Teferi. Untap. Draw Lotus Field. Go to combat. Attack our opponent for 6. Awesome. Now, trying to use our brain a little bit more. I'm going to keep Shark... I'm going to drop the Platinum Empyrean Madcap Experiment. Because, like, it was good there. It bought us a little bit of time, but it wasn't as good as it could have been. And I think I'm going to bring the bolts back in, along with Cleansing Wildfire Blood Sun. Oh no, that was the 4th. That's not the Cleansing Wildfire that was in the main deck. I think Serum Visions and a Force of Negation are going to be the way to go here. Aether Gust is nice, but it only hits the less important threat, or it doesn't hit any of their threats except Croxa, I think. Force of Negation is potentially useful. Mystical Dispute is a 3-mana mana leak. Tail's End hits Croxa and Lurrus. Yeah, I think taking Platinum Empyrean back out of the deck is the way to go. It was good, it bought us some time, and it potentially could be very good. But my opponent may have brought in more artifact removal. We'll see. Okay, well we have a couple of recycles, and we have a path. We do not have a big mana strategy here, which I think might hurt us. Especially if my opponent has, like, Thoughtseize into a fast threat. Bombat Courier. Okay. We draw Steam Vents. I'm going to shock a Hallowed Fountain. Pass the turn. I will path Bombat Courier. Probably beginning of combat. I guess I could wait to see if they play a Scourge that we would theoretically have a tougher time dealing with. I don't think my opponent would exchange a hand of 5 for a hand of 2, unless their hand was like all grave power and nothing they actually wanted. Okay, opponent cracks Bloodstained Mire. They get a Blood Crypt untapped. Opponent plays Kroxa. I am gonna path Kroxa now, because they do have, like, Kroxa is a late game threat that we are gonna have a huge amount of trouble dealing with. I'm actually gonna discard Teferi here, just because we are a ways away from him mana-wise. Okay, I draw Serum Visions. I think the play here is to play Island and try and cycle a Shark Typhoon. We want to save Snap for a turn we have 3 mana for Snap Path. Okay, opponent has their other basic. They play a Swift Spear. They play a Thoughtseize. Okay. Well, they're definitely going to take Snapcaster. I don't think I want to block with Snapcaster either. Yeah, they take Snapcaster. They go to combat. They attack for 3. Now Bombat Courier is actually a problem, because it's going to draw them a lot of cards. So no blocks. Take 3 down to 13. And they play a second Kroxa. Let's go ahead and cycle Shark Typhoon. Make a 0/0, draw Teferi. Kroxa enters. We gotta pitch Teferi. Untap. Yeah, the second Kroxa makes my first path on Kroxa really bad. Path here, though, is great. So Serum Visions, we draw Tail's End. Cleansing Wildfire to the bottom. Do I want to draw Plains? I do kind of want to draw this Plains. I'm going to play a Steam Vents tapped. My opponent only has 1 card in hand. So we're going to path this Bombat Courier because it's not going to give them a land. They're not going to get a 5th card engraved for Kroxa without using one of their mana first. Okay. And in theory, we're at most taking like 2 damage, or I guess 5 damage if they have a Bolt. They attack for 1. We go to 12. Opponent puts Lurrus in their hand. We untap and draw Plains. Play Plains. Pass the turn. Now, my opponent is going to cast Lurrus, like 100%, just because they need the additional pressure. Unless they have a fetch land, they might play Kroxa. Kroxa, I would have to Tail's End. Okay? Opponent's going to get in for 1. I'm not going to cycle Shark Typhoon to block here. I don't think that will be strong enough. If my opponent plays Kroxa, I absolutely have to Tail's End. And the question is, would I cycle Shark Typhoon for 0, knowing I could get a blocker out of it next turn? I'm not sure. My opponent could play Lurrus, and then they would be able to play Kroxa for 2 mana. They would have to sack it, but that would basically function as a Lightning Bolt. Yeah, I think I have to Tail's End Lurrus. So now the question is, do I cycle Shark Typhoon? I don't think I do. I think I'll actually make a blocker with it. Snapcaster's great. Snapcaster gives me a whole host of other decisions to make right now. So, like, I could Snapcaster Tail's End if my opponent tries to play Kroxa. Especially if they try and play Kroxa main phase 1. Opponent goes to combat, they attack. We'll take the 1. If my opponent, like, casts a Bolt or something, then maybe I would consider Snap Path, but... So they're going to play Kroxa, and we are going to counter Kroxa with Tail's End. Man, Tail's End is such a good card. So good. So Snapcaster Tail's End. Tail's End on Kroxa. Okay. We untap. We draw Steam Vents. Shocking down to 8, I think is what we do here. Go to combat. Attack for 2. This does mean we are going to have to block with the Shark token. So if my opponent has like push, bolt, bolt, we're dead. But I think this is our best chance at winning the game. Okay, second Swift Spear. They go to combat. We could try and cycle and hit a bolt. I don't think that's correct. I think we just cycle for a creature here. They have a lightning bolt for the creature. Okay. Well, that is not a lightning bolt for our face. But we are taking 4. If my opponent has anything else they can play here, we're dead. Okay, we go to 4. Play Scourge of the Skyclaves. We need a Settle the Wreckage, and right now. Cryptic could buy us a turn. That is not a Cryptic. Play Lotus Field. Sack our basics. If my opponent can cast a single non-creature spell, we die. So this Force of Negation is kind of useless. Okay, that is not a non-creature spell. Opponent goes to combat. Attacks us for a lot. We chump here. They only have 1 card in hand. We still have to draw Settle the Wreckage. Okay, yep, we're dead. Okay, well, we learned a lot. And that was an hour-long match 1. Wow, okay. I'm going to try and play a little bit quicker, and I'm going to try and take better lines. A few of my lines in that match were really questionable, and it was still very close. So I will see you all in round 3. Or in round 2, excuse me. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Alrighty. Round 2, here we go. I would love to play first. This hand is not keepable. This hand might work. It's a little bit slow. I'm going to put back 1 Lotus Field. And we're going to start with the Triome tapped. Pass the turn. Opponent plays a Savai Triome, which means they could be Smallpox or Stoneblade. Play a Steam Vents tapped. Pass the turn. Opponent plays a Bloodstained Mire. Cracks Bloodstained Mire. Plays a Swamp. And plays a Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger. Okay, I'm going to discard Lightning Bolt here. I didn't want to take any damage in case this is another Scourge of the Skyclaves deck. Play Blood Sun, we can trip. Draw land, pass the turn. Next turn, we potentially get a very big draw from Valakut Awakening. Bloodstained Mire does no longer does anything, which is awesome. We're hosing fetch lands. I love this card now. It's very bad versus most Amulet decks because... Actually, no, it's probably good versus Amulet because it removes the bounce land trigger. Okay, so we're against Rakdos midrange, so we can afford to take damage if we need to. We're going to play Lotus Field. Red, Valakut Awakening. We're going to put all 3 of our cards back. Draw 3 new ones. Any order. Okay, we got to Settle the Wreckage and Big Teferi. Pass the turn. The cool thing is, Blood Sun also removes our Enters the Battlefield tapped clause lands. It takes Hexproof off of Lotus Field, and it makes Flagstones... Flagstones potentially causes some issues, because, like, if we needed to destroy land... Oh, now our opponent just played straight up Blood Moon. In which case, we are probably completely hosed. Talk about a quick turnaround. Yeah, okay, well, we'll play it out, but we don't have our basics. I guess if we get Cleansing Wildfire, we can get to our basics. But, yeah, that's a little awkward. Okay, opponent Thought Seizes us. I guess they have to take Teferi, because that's the thing we're closest to casting, yeah. Attack for 1. We untap and draw Teferi because the Thoughtseize curse. Pass the turn. Now if we draw our other island, or we can Cleansing Wildfire into our other island, we can cast Nexus of Fate. When it gets a... pitches Dreadbore, gets a 3rd Magmatic Channeler. They get a Bolt, Bolt our face. Now their Channelers are 4/4s. We need to do something, and that something is not Top Deck Mountain. We technically have 1 more turn, but no way to get double white. I could cycle for a Big Shark, but at that point it would be too late. So I think that's the game. Okay, so my opponent is playing really hard removal, which tells me that we do not want our Platinum Empyreans. We do have Cleansing Wildfires, though, so I'm going to bring in another Cleansing Wildfire. And Aether Gust is a way that we can deal with Blood Moon, as well as some of our opponents', or if not all of our opponents' threats. The question is, what do we take out in this matchup? Bolt is theoretically useful against things like Pyromancer, both seasoned and young. It's good against Confidant. We may want to drop Path here, because Path is going to be hard to cast under a Blood Moon, so we'll Settle. I do want to keep 1 Settle the Wreckage in the deck, simply because It's our only board wipe, which I'm not thrilled about. I'm going to cut a Tail's End. My opponent doesn't play a lot of legendary spells, so it's only good for the Lotus Field thing. And that's not going to happen much under a Blood Moon. Maybe I should be playing Narset Parter Veils in this matchup as well, although she is double blue. Cryptic is going to be hard to cast for sure. Blood Sun's a little bit awkward, but like it's still okay. I'm going to cut one Blood Sun, and I guess a Serum Visions, because I don't know what else to cut. We'll try it like this. I'll play first. Okay, we do have an Aether Gust. I can work with this, I think. If we draw a Tail's End and we can get this Lotus Field in without a Blood Moon happening, I'll be ecstatic. We are playing all tap lands right now, which is kind of the downside of this hand. So start Triome, pass the turn. Opponent starts Marsh Flats, Swamp, Inquisition. So they can take Valakut Awakening or they can take Aether Gust. They're probably going to take Aether Gust because them fetching a Swamp tells me they are definitely going on the Blood Moon plan, which I don't like. We untap. We draw Serum Visions. Cast Serum Visions. Oh, they took Valakut Stoneforge to keep us off of Lotus Field. I guess that's kind of a good plan. Put Island on top. Pass the turn. We can't play Lotus Field. I guess that's the bad thing about playing these dual-faced lands versus decks that have hand hate. We needed to have another land to play, theoretically. Okay, we're getting Thought Seized again. Opponent should take Aether Gust this time. And the third Thought Seize, probably Shark Typhoon. That's our next cantrip. They could take Cryptic. Alright, they take Cryptic. They're on the take us completely off of action plan. We draw an island. Play an island, pass the turn. So we're definitely cycling Shark Typhoon this turn. I do not want to play Lotus Field next turn. Okay, opponent plays a Magmatic Channeler. We'll go ahead and cycle right now. Don't make a Shark. We get a Tail's End. Tail's End is perfect. We draw Hallowed Fountain, so hold control, play Lotus Field. Tail's End the trigger. And if my opponent doesn't play a Blood Moon, we can at least play a Teferi. Opponent pitches Marsh Flats, gets Kroxa or Kroxa. Plays Kroxa. We're going to discard Hallowed Fountain and take the damage. Opponent plays a Marsh Flats, and they have one card in hand. We untap. We draw Serum Visions. So white, blue, triple blue, play Teferi. And Teferi is going to tuck Magmatic Channeler because my opponent doesn't have a lot else going on. They crack Marsh Flats. They do not want to redraw Magmatic Channeler. So my opponent can play Kroxa next turn. And if they do, we have to play we can plus this Teferi and then down tick this Teferi. We can pitch Serum Visions here. Okay. Opponent plays Kroxa from the grave. Discard Serum Visions. We don't take any damage. We untap. Draw Force of Negation plus Teferi. We get a Steam Vents. Play Steam Vents tapped. Play other big Teferi, keep the new one, tuck Kroxa, and now if my opponent has Burn or a Dreadbore, we can force a negation to counter it, but that only works once. So if my opponent has multiple pieces of Burn, that is in theory a problem. Alright, triple blue, counter Lily. Opponent has a land and nothing. Alright, we're in a good place. So if my opponent's next threat is red, like if it's a Kroxa that they happen to redraw here, we can Aether Gust it. See if they put it on top or on bottom. They put it on the bottom of their deck. And they play a Liliana, the Last Hope. Uptick Liliana, no targets. We untap. We draw Raugrin Triome, so uptick Teferi and draw Lightning Bolt. Triple white, cycle the Triome. Get a Lotus Field. I'm going to Lightning Bolt Lily. Play Lotus Field. Sack the two lands I tapped. Pass the turn and uptick and untap both Lotus fields. Opponent upticks Lily, no targets, plays Croxa. We have nothing to discard, so we lose life. Opponent is a long way off of doing anything with Croxa. They can mill some cards with Lily. Okay, we draw Aether Gust. Uptick to Fairy. We draw Force. Pass the turn. I feel a lot safer now. Not untapping any lands. Okay, opponent pluses on a non-existent creature. Plays a Magmatic Channeler, which will get Aether Gusted. They put it on top of their deck. We untap. We draw Cleansing Wildfire. So, uptick to Fairy. We draw Valakut Awakening. Cleansing Wildfire. Oh, actually, I don't want to put any more cards in my opponent's grave. I'm going to Valakut Awakening and pitch Cleansing Wildfire to draw 2 cards. Can we get another Teferi? And we have a Cryptic now. So, pass the turn. Untap Lotus Field. This deck is like crazy when you're untapping Lotus Field with Teferi. We're going to counter Magmatic Channeler and draw a card. We still have Force of Negation as well. Plus now we have Snapcaster Lightning Bolt. Okay, opponent mills 2 cards to pick up a creature. They pick up Magmatic Channeler. They play Magmatic Channeler, that's fine. So Snapcaster for Lightning Bolt. Bolt Channeler. Oh man, this is dirty. Because now we can attack and kill Lily. We don't have an answer to Croxa, but we don't really need one. We can just tuck it with Teferi if all else fails. Okay, Cryptic's an answer. Cryptic works. Go to combat. Attack Liliana. I could play this Lotus Field, and then I would have 9 mana. I guess it's only bad if my opponent plays Blood Moon, which we will have plenty of time to react to, so... Sack the lands. Pass the turn. Untap Lotus Field. Because now I have Cryptic plus Force. That means whatever they draw plus recasting Croxa. That's dirty. This feels awesome. Alright, opponent's replaying Croxa. Counter draw. Yeah! Wow! That worked really well. I was missing Path a little bit because it's just a straight up answer to Croxa, but white is going to be our hardest thing to get for a Blood Moon play. I think we just keep it as is to minimize our dependence on white. Okay. We have early removal in the form of a Lightning Bolt. No flagstones for Cleansing Wildfire. I think this hand is fine, especially with a basic island, so I'm going to keep. Opponent starts Triome. Yeah, we're going to start Canal, because holding up Bolt is somewhat reasonable. There's a lot of 2-mana plays that my opponent will play that will die to Bolt. Like Channeler. Zappity zap zap. Kill the Channeler, we untap. We draw Force of Negation, which does help a little bit. We're going to play the island so that we have Aether Gust. Alright, I am going to actually pitch Aether Gust to Force of Negation. We draw Cryptic. So I'm going to play a Triome. I'm saving Cleansing Wildfire. Maybe I shouldn't, but we have so many of them in the deck. Alright, Thoughtseize. They probably take Cryptic here. Cleansing Wildfire is something we could play even if our opponent had Blood Moon, which is one reason why I'm not playing it right now. Especially if my opponent has, like, other, I guess, mana denial things. If they have a Blood Moon right here, I'm going to feel silly, but that looks exactly like what this is. Okay, so that was a mistake. We draw Tail's End, play Steam Vents, pass the turn. We can't really do anything. Opponent Inquisitions, somehow knowing that we drew Tail's End. They play Blood Crypt, pass. The good news is we're not under any pressure at all right now. And that if we ever draw another Aether Gust, we can just completely get rid of this blood. Never mind. It's going to take multiple Aether Gusts now. Okay, Shark Typhoon is great. Shark Typhoon is a redraw plus a threat, and my opponent currently has no pressure. If they have a Fatal Push or a Lightning Bolt, that will be disheartening. We're playing around Dreadbore. by cycling on our opponent's end step. Okay, we draw another Tail's End. Untap. Draw Snapcaster Mage. Okay, Snapcaster Mage gets us out from under Blood Moon. So go to combat. Opponent has a Lightning Bolt. That's fine. Pass to our second main. Snapcaster. Hit Cleansing Wildfire. Cleanse our Spire Bluff Canal. Get a Plains. We draw Blood Sun. Pass the turn. Blood Sun is it's an okay redraw when you're under Blood Moon. We're basically looking for another Shark Typhoon. Opponent keeps drawing Lightning Bolts. We draw Valakut Awakening. Yeah, I think wheeling away this whole hand is the way to go right now. Put them back in any order, I don't care. Okay, there's Aether Gust number 1. Play Flagstones. Pass the turn. Leave up Aether Gust. We're not going to use it to hit Blood Moon, because if we can land Teferi, we should win anyway. Okay. We're going to do this to see if we can get our opponent to top that Blood Moon. Because if they do, they're going to be really sad. They put it on top of their deck. They think we have 2 Aether Gusts, and that is how we're going to win this game. Opponent takes a Serum Visions, and now they're drawing a Blood Moon for a turn which does nothing and gives us a free turn with Teferi. That's awesome. That felt like a big brain play. Alright, Teferi uptick. We're going to draw Spire Bluff Canal. Okay, pass the turn. Untap our 2 basics. Opponent top decks a Blood Moon, sure. We untap. We need a, not a Cryptic, we need another Shark Typhoon. Uptick to Fairy, we get a Valakut Awakening. So we'll go ahead and cast Valakut Awakening. We're going to put back our whole hand, draw 4 new cards. Any order. That card feels ridiculously strong in this matchup. Play a Steam Vents. And we are going to Cleansing Wildfire ourselves. Get our other island. We draw Flagstones. Okay. No reason to Cleansing Wildfire ourselves again. We could hit one of our opponent's swamps, actually. Gonna do that. The opponent has another swamp. We get a Raugrin Triome, which is a recycle. Untap. Not the card recycle, because that's null profusion, but a redraw. Opponent top decks a land. And they kept an all Thoughtseize 1 threat hand, and we happen to have an answer for that 1 threat. So cycle the Triome, we hit Cryptic. Untap. We draw Snapcaster Mage, which we can cast Aether Gust with. We could... No, we can't cast Force Negation. So start by drawing a card. It's a Lotus Field. Play the Lotus Field. And I guess we're going to just Bolt, Snap, Bolt. I could hit Valakut Awakening and we could draw more cards. I guess it depends on what my opponent plays here. Pithing Needle. And we do anything about this? Because I don't think we can do anything about this. Can't Tail's End that. That's really unfortunate. Alright, we're on the Bolt, Snap, Bolt plan. Okay, opponent names Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. So Bolt. Snapcaster. Lightning Bolt. Maybe the Snapcaster should have gone for Valakut Awakening. We untap. Draw Cleansing Wildfire. So cleanse another swamp. We get to cantrip. Draw Blood Sun. Play Blood Sun. Draw Snapcaster. I'm gonna hold Flagstones in hand. I'm probably gonna Snapcaster Lightning Bolt here, because it's gonna take my opponent to 1. But there's a chance that I want a Valakut Awakening next turn, and if that's the case, kind of want to have cards in hand. Okay, opponent Dreadbores the Snapcaster Mage. Now the question is, I don't really think there's a question. I guess I just Snapcaster Lightning Bolt here. Okay, we untap. Draw Lotus Field. Play Lotus Field. I should have held that in hand, actually. For the same reason that I was talking about all this, I really probably need to draw Valakut Awakening, because I need to get to another Shark Typhoon. Especially if my opponent has a blocker, or a third Blood Moon doesn't do it. Alright, Force of Negation. Force of Negation is great, because that would counter removal for Snapcaster. We just really have to worry about a blocker at this point. That's a blocker. And my opponent gets to draw cards. We have no Lightning Bolts left. We are out of Lightning Bolts. So we gotta get to Shark Typhoon. 4 mana for a Boil? Alright. Well, that's getting countered. Good to know my opponent has Boil. Okay, that is a Shark Typhoon. Pass the turn. So now my opponent needs to not have removal for our Shark Typhoon token. I guess I could have cast Shark Typhoon, because it's a permanent type my opponent can't interact with. But their last card is going to have to be Fatal Push, and it isn't. So opponent does not attack for fear of a Snapcaster Mage. Mega Shark. And that gives us the match. Whew! Alright, I'll see you guys in round 3. I think I made a couple of questionable decisions there, but I'm learning how this deck works, and I'm kind of understanding the parameters that I'm given to win. I really like this deck. I think this deck is sweet. I think we made a really, really, really big brain play Aether Gusting that Blood Moon in response, because my opponent, in an attempt to play around a second or third Aether Gust through that Thoughtseize, put that Blood Moon on top of their deck, and that was basically a time walk, which was awesome. So, alright, I'll see you guys in round 3. Round 3, here we go. I'd love to play first. Tail's End, double Cleansing Wildfire, no payoff though. I think with a hand like this, I'm going to keep it, simply because if I go up against a Tron player, this could be really good. Could potentially be good against some other decks too. Plus, we could always top deck of Flagstones, and if we do, we're going to be on a lot of mana very quickly. My opponent starts Misty into a basic Forest, and suspends a Search for Tomorrow. So they could be Scape Shift. They're probably Scape Shift. Play Spirebluff Canal, and we're going to pass. Now, fun fact about Tail's End, you can actually counter the Unsuspend trigger, which will counter something like Search for Tomorrow. Another Search for Tomorrow, and a Bounce Land. Well, I am going to Cleansing Wildfire the Bounce Land. So, play Valakut Stoneforge. Cleansing Wildfire, Simic Growth Chamber. My opponent playing Search for Tomorrows, though, tells me that they have a lot of basics. Okay, 1 Search for Tomorrow comes off of Suspend, so my opponent will be up to 3 mana this turn. This is probably like just the Simic Titan deck. Okay. We untap, we draw Lotus Field. So I could either play a proactive Lotus Field and go up to 6 mana, or I can Tail's End a Search for Tomorrow. I think we're going to go for the Lotus Field play here. If I have to sack 2 lands, it's not that bad. Like if my opponent has a counter for the Tail's End. Okay, they Growth Spiral in response. This could just be Simic or Sultai like Ramp. This is another Growth Spiral. It's a Mana Leak. Okay. So we are going to have to sack 2 lands here. That's not too bad, because it's like, at worst, it's effectively a land drop. Serum Visions, Cryptic Command, Shark Typhoon. Do I want these? I kind of want Cryptic. I don't think I want Shark Typhoon. Pass the turn. Okay, Search for Tomorrow comes off of Suspend. I think my opponent's deck is a Nexus deck. Like Reclamation Nexus. Which is potentially very problematic. Chalice on 1. We actually don't care about Chalice on 1. Our only 1 mana spells are Serum Visions, Lightning Bolt, and Path to Exile, none of which I think are going to be particularly useful right now. Okay, put a Growth Spirals again. So we have Cryptic, and then we will have Snap Cryptic. I know my opponent plays a lot of basics, but if we can keep them off of enough lands, that could matter. Because I want to draw a card here, I'm going to Cleansing Wildfire the Flooded Grove. Because that's a land that could potentially produce double green by itself. Okay, opponent floats mana. They get a basic land, we get to draw a card. It's a Steam Vents. They cycle Ketria Triome. Okay. Opponent untaps. They draw a card. They play a Hinterland Harbor. So the way they're playing now tells me that they have reactive spells in hand. Like my opponent is having, like, has Cryptics, or they have kill spells, or something to that effect. I'm going to shock Steam Vents here. I don't have a 2-mana spell I can use to protect a fairy, so I think we're going to have to try and force our opponent to make the first move. I don't like being in that position versus my opponent's deck, because they have so many more counterspells than I do. Oh, I can actually Snapcaster Valakut Awakening here. Throw away Path and settle the wreckage. I do like that. Because that's something that's like... that might draw a counter here. So cast Valakut Awakening. Triple red. Opponent remands this. Okay. That's pretty good. We untap. Draw Snapcaster. So go to combat. Attack for 2. Opponent goes down to 14. We pass. Opponent untaps. Opponent plays a Dryad of the Elysian Grove. Let me think about this. That does stop Snapcaster from attacking. I think I'm going to try and get my opponent to use this mana now. We're going to counter and draw. We can play around a Mana Leak. We can't play through a Remand. Or a Cryptic. We can't play through Cryptic either. Okay, opponent Cryptics are Cryptic. They land Dryad. They play a Radiant Fountain. And play a Scalding Tarn. Okay, so opponent had a lot of lands in hand. We untap. Draw Raugrin Triome. So, blue, blue, blue. Blue, white. Play Teferi. Okay, Teferi resolves, which is excellent. Plus Teferi. Draw Cryptic. Play Raugrin Triome. Pass the turn. No attacks. We're probably going to have to block. We're going to untap Lotus Field and Triome. Okay. So now the plan is... Okay, my opponent is going to Mystic Sanctuary Cryptic Command on their upkeep. They want to draw Cryptic, because they want a way to protect Dryad. I'm going to bounce Chalice in response. And draw. Because then I can Path Dryad. And we're not going to die to, like, Scapeshift Valakut. Not unless my opponent has another Dryad, I guess. They don't seem to have any more basics. So that's something to be aware of. My opponent only has 5 basics. I guess I probably still died to Scapeshift. Maybe I fought over the wrong thing. Prime Time. Okay. Prime Time is what we in the business call a threat. A big one. So they gotta go for a Field of the Dead play here, I guess. They are holding Cryptic. Man, Magic is lagging very hard. Okay, they replay Chalice on 1. We untap. Draw Spirebluff Canal. Uptick to Fairy. We get a Raugrin Triome. So play Spirebluff Canal. And now we have Settle the Wreckage, Snap Cryptic. To play around our opponent's Cryptic. Or to play through our opponent's Cryptic, I should say. So, untap Spirebluff Canal, pass the turn. They go to combat, they draw. Opponent plays Dryad. That is an issue. They go to combat. They attack. So we are going to Settle the Wreckage. Oh, we do not have Snap Cryptic. I think that means we die? I could Snapcaster Tail's End. I'd like to Snapcaster Path, but I've never seen a deck like my opponent's that actually plays the cards that it's playing. Alright, Snapcaster. But like my opponent is holding Cryptic. I don't think they shuffled after they drew Cryptic. Snapcaster Tail's End. Tail's End the Primeval Titan trigger. Okay, opponent Cryptics, counters Tail's End, picks up Mystic Sanctuary, then get Valakut, and then kill both Snapcasters and Teferi? Well, they can just target us, I guess. Are we dead? 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 8... Yeah, they can fetch Scalding Tarn. Okay, we're dead. Okay. Well, I didn't know quite what I was playing against, but it looks like Simic Titan now to me. So, what do we do with this deck with this many counters and Titans and stuff? I think we want to bring in the Aether Gusts and the other Tail's End. I think Lightning Bolt is probably not going to do enough. Drop a Serum Visions. I need Force. I need Blood Sun. I now understand Valakut's Awakening as it relates to Teferi's ultimate. Settle the Wreckage I'm not sure is actually going to do much, but it is a board wipe, and it does matter if my opponent ults. Or not ults, but if they get Field of the Dead, we might need to reset the board. So I don't think I can go down on it completely. You know what? I'm going to cut the Serum Visions. Do I want the Mystic? I don't think I want the Mystical Dispute, because I think the just taxing counter is not going to be enough. I may want the other Cleansing Wildfire, but I think this is how I want to run this. I would love to play first. Okay, this is a hand that plays Blood Sun. We have a Cleansing Wildfire and a Tail's End, so I am going to keep. So we will start Steam Vents tapped. I would love to Tail's End a fetch land, and then untap and play Blood Sun. Pass the turn. I really, really want to draw land. Like, unbelievably so. Okay. Opponent plays an island. We are going to run out Snapcaster. Okay. Untap. Draw Teferi. Not thrilled about that. Go to combat. Attack for 2. Now the question is, do we leave up Tail's End or do we play Cleansing Wildfire? And I think we leave up Tail's End, because the odds my opponent plays a fetch land is probably higher than... Yeah. Alright, they have a Growth Spiral. Okay, they play a fetch land. They crack the fetch land. We counter it. Pass the turn. Opponent untaps. They play an island. We untap. How am I 7 minutes behind my opponent right now? Play Flagstones. And we are just going to main phase Cleansing Wildfire ourselves. My opponent may ignore this completely, and they do. So Cleansing Wildfire going to get us an island. Flagstone's going to get us a Raugrin Triome. Okay, we go to combat. Attack for 2. Looks like our opponent went down to 15. They cycle a Ketria Triome. They untap. They play a Misty. We untap. We draw Settle the Wreckage. Go to combat. I guess at this point we leave up Cryptic. Or like Snap Tail's End. Attack our opponent for 2. I think I will Tail's End another fetch land. And force my opponent to use some of their interaction. They don't. They don't crack the fetch land. Okay, I think I might have to restart the client because of how slow this is going. Okay, opponent plays another fetch land. Okay, I am going to Cryptic, bounce Breeding Pool, and draw. Man, this is going so slow. Okay, opponent remands Cryptic. We untap. Draw Cleansing Wildfire. And I think I'm just going to play Blood Sun. If we could cantrip into a land, that'd be great. Opponent cracks Misty. Gets a basic Forest. Cracks Misty. Gets a basic Forest. Does not counter. They wilt Blood Sun. Okay. We draw Force of Negation, which does make me feel a little bit better. Hit our opponent for 2. Opponent goes to 9, they untap. They play an Obero. Well, now I'm kind of missing the lightning bolts for reach here. 4 mana, opponent is going to Cryptic our Triome. I'm okay with that. I don't actually particularly care. They don't want me to have Cryptic online. If I top deck a land, I will anyway. Okay, if I top deck a land that isn't Lotus Field, I should have specified. So play out the Triome, go to combat, attack for 2. I'm going to discard Settle the Wreckage. Okay, opponent untaps. They play Cavern, they name Dryad. So Gust the Dryad, because Gust doesn't care about Cavern. The opponent is going to Cryptic, so we are going to negate Cryptic, pitching to Fairy. They put Dryad on top of their deck. We untap, draw Lotus Field. So Cryptic's not going to help us here. So Cleansing Wildfire Cavern. See what we draw. I think we kind of needed another Aether Gust. I guess I could have snapped Aether Gust, but... Sack, Steam Vents Island. Go to combat. We're going to flash in Snapcaster end of turn. Kind of want my opponent to think we have more interaction. It might be better to snap Aether Gust at a different point in time. Yeah, I don't think I should be taking out the bolts like I have been taking out the bolts. Okay, opponent replays Dryad. They play Valakut. They're going to kill Snapcaster with it. They play Misty. They hit us for 3. They pass. Draw Flagstones. Play Flagstones. Pass the turn. Why does it feel like my clock is ticking down so fast? Alright, hang on. I'm going to restart the client. Okay. On my opponent's upkeep, it looks like they're going to try and get back Cryptic Command. I want Mystic, or Misty, what is it? Misty Rainforest's ability to resolve so that they have to target with Valakut. Because them drawing Cryptic means that they're not drawing a land. Okay, Lotus Field, Snapcaster. Snapcaster for Aether Gust. Okay, Aether Gust, Dryad. So Valakut does not do any damage. Is my opponent still going to put back Cryptic? They do. They cycle Wilt. Now they can replay Dryad, and their last card in hand is a Cryptic Command. Oh, they can pick up Obero and replay it. Oh. I guess that's pretty good. Okay. We untap and draw Spire Bluff Canal, which unfortunately for us is not a really relevant spell right now. I'm going to tap out of Cryptic this turn because this is my only chance to draw anything useful, like a Blood Sun, and we didn't. So sack, Flagstones, I'm going to go get Hollowed Fountain, we will not pay 2 life. Pass the turn. So Obero in this deck just is double Lightning Bolt. Wow, and they top deck Field. Like, in the realm of amazing top decks, that's up there. Okay, opponent attacks, takes us to 4, and they have a Cryptic. We have a Shark Typhoon, which doesn't really do anything. Pass the turn. Yeah, Shark Typhoon does nothing. Okay, well, we learned some stuff. That second game felt a little more winnable, but I should not have taken out the bolts like I did. And I'll see you guys in round 4. Alright, sorry, round 4, here we go. I just realized I was muted. Looks like we're against Lurrus again, so this is either Hammer Time or Death Shadow. I'm not sure which is better for us. Looks like hammer time. Hammer time might actually be really bad for us, because we may not be fast enough. At least not with this hand. Okay, lightning bolt off the top, please. Blood Sun is not what I asked for. So I guess play Spire Bluff Canal, pass the turn. Okay, opponent untaps and draws. They play an Ink Moth. They play a Stoneforge Mystic, so next turn they're gonna have Hammer Time. Which means we need to draw a Bolt or a Path, and immediately. We drew neither. Play out Flagstones, pass the turn. Our opponent may not go for it. They may try and play safe. They have no reason to, but they can. Okay. Opponent goes to combat, attacks us for 1. It's going to be 11, though. Okay. They stick a Colossus Hammer onto Ornithopter. They have a second hammer? Okay, yeah. We're super dead then. Okay. So versus my opponent's deck, I think we just have to mulligan for a fast hand, and in addition have Settle the Wreckage, and I think this is the time for the Platinum Empyrean play, which means I kind of want that other Cleansing Wildfire. Force of Negation still probably going to matter a lot. Shark Typhoon might be a little bit slow, as is Cryptic. I don't want to go completely down on Cryptic because, you know what, maybe we don't even play Madcap Empyrean. My opponent plays Path. I guess how likely is it that we can protect ourselves from that? Yeah, actually, I'm not thinking that's correct. I think the other Settle the Wreckage is all we want to bring in. Okay. Try it like this, I guess. I would love to play first. Not a keepable hand. We have to mulligan. This one, I think, works. We're going to put back a Flagstones. So, start Hallowed Fountain tapped. Pass the turn. Okay, opponent plays Ink Moth, Springleaf Drum, Ornithopter, Giver, Bauble, Bauble, cracks Bauble, passes. They draw. We draw a Lightning Bolt. So I can play Steam Vents to hold up Lightning Bolt. My opponent is pretty far off of being able to play... I guess I should have started Steam Vents, but there was no way for me to know. So I'm going to play Flagstones, pass the turn. We still got to go on the Lotus Field plan so that we can play Settle the Wreckage at some point. Maybe playing Steam Vents there was better, but... if my opponent has like Plains Pure Steel into Colossus Hammer, it's going to be game over. Not sure why my camera loses focus like that, especially when I'm not like moving around a whole lot, but it is irritating to me. I have it set to autofocus, which just turning autofocus on and off fixes it, but like, it's weird. Okay, so my opponent gets a Colossus Hammer, because why wouldn't they? They get a Cranial Plating, okay. Well, we might still be in this game then. My opponent can play a Cranial Plating this turn, and they can attack us for 1 if they really want. And they go to combat. They do not attack. We untap, we draw Big Teferi, give up on our lands, sack them to Lotus Field. Flagstones will get Triome, pass the turn. Okay, opponent plays a Silent Clearing. Animates Ink Moth. Plays another Ornithopter. Am I dead? I might be dead. Suits up Ink Moth with Cranial Plating. I'll be dead in 2 turns, that's for sure. Hits me for 6. Infect, of course. We untap, we draw Cryptic. Shock Steam Vents. And we are going to play into a Mana Tithe. But I'm not going to play around Mana Tithe. Upticks a Fairy. We draw Cleansing Wildfire. So untap here and here. Now we have Settle and we have Cryptic. I imagine we're going to have to use Settle the Wreckage first. Okay. Opponent equips Cranial Plating. Goes to combat. We could Cryptic tap and then Bolt Giver. I think that's better next turn, though. Oh, wait. Hang on. Alright, we're going to let them attack and then we're going to settle. So opponent can get a basic land out of their deck. They can't protect this with Giver of Runes, because we target them, we don't target the creature. They play another Ink Moth. And they play a Stoneforge Mystic, okay. This time they get Shadow Spear. We untap. Draw Sacred Foundry. So play Sacred Foundry untapped. Uptick to Fairy. We get Tail's End. Cleansing Wildfire. The Ink Moth Nexus. Let's see what we draw. We can Lightning Bolt. Giver of Runes now. And still have Cryptic tap mana if it's too dangerous. I think it's better to just Cryptic tap regardless. We could Tail's End Giver of Runes. Like, that is a thing we can do. Okay, opponent plays Shadow Spear. We're going to make them use their mana to equip. Okay, they equip an Ornithopter. Go to combat. Tap all our opponent's creatures and draw. Okay, Snapcaster's great. Opponent plays another Giver. And Steel Shaper's Gift. Getting Colossus Hammer. So we can Lightning Bolt. I guess Ornithopter. We untap, we draw Cryptic, which is also excellent. Uptick to Fairy. Play Steam Vents tapped. We're basically going to just try and Cryptic our way through all of our opponent's turns until we can ult to Fairy and then just start exiling their board. Untap Steam Vents. Opponent plays a Springleaf Drum. Their other last card in hand is Colossus Hammer. They play out Colossus Hammer. They suit up Ornithopter, go to combat. Cryptic, tap all creatures my opponents control, draw a card. We draw Shark Typhoon. I'm going to cycle this. I guess I should have Snap Cryptic instead of using the one out of hand. Draw Lotus Field. Play Flagstones. Uptick to Fairy. Draw another Flagstones. Okay. Yeah, attack for 1. We're not going to untap any lands. And we just want to draw a Valakut Awakening and then, like, exile our opponent's entire board. Opponent Thought Seizes us. So this is going to be a Snapcaster counter tap. I guess we could still tap and draw. Yeah, let's tap our opponent's creatures and draw a card. They can take whatever they want from our hand. We should be fine. Because then we can just start exiling every permanent that matters. Yeah. Okay. Our opponent is playing Thoughtseize and Hand Hate. We do need to be aware of that. Run it back, I guess. I don't think we adjust for being on the draw really at all. We're just really going to need an opener with some removal. Hopefully some removal that will stick. I have an idea as to why I've been seeing so much lag on Moto. And like on startup in addition to what might be exacerbating the memory leak. So I'm going to make some adjustments and we'll see what happens. Like not this league, but probably for next one. Okay, this hand is a Force of Negation, but it doesn't do anything else. I mean, if we get another land, maybe. But a single Force of Negation, like, if we get Thoughtseize, it's just game over. There's nothing we do this whole game. Not thrilled about it, but I think I have to keep it at this point. Gonna drop to Fairy, I think. Okay. So my opponent starts Windswept Teeth. They crack Windswept Teeth and find Godless Shrine untapped into a Sigarda's Aid. Okay. They also play a Mishra's Bauble. We draw Force of Negation. So play Ravagrin Triome, pass the turn. So Force of Negation can at least counter one hammer. Opponent cracks Bauble. Okay, opponent plays an Inkmoth Nexus into an Ornithopter. Into another Ornithopter. Into a Steel Shaper's Gift, which is definitely getting Colossus Hammer. Well, if they just cast Colossus Hammer, we have to counter it. So exile Colossus Hammer with Force, pitching Shark Typhoon. Okay. So opponent has 2 cards in hand. We draw Teferi, play Spire Bluff Canal, Cleansing Wildfire, Inkmoth Nexus, so theoretically we don't get one shot. If my opponent has 2 more Colossus Hammers, we will get one shot, but I mean in that scenario there's just nothing we can do. And if they have another hammer, we have to draw Path, basically. Okay. They attack us for 10, we go to 10, we have 1 draw to hit a Path. That's a Path. So play Valakut Stoneforge, pass the turn, stop on my opponent's upkeep, Path Ornithopter. Okay. Opponent gets a land. They play Mishra's Bauble, they play Pure Steel, and that gives them Metalcraft. Well, they had to have 0-drop Pure Steel there. Okay. So that's 2 pretty fast decks in this league that this deck doesn't seem to do well against. Other control variants tend to do a little bit better against decks like that because we max out on early game answers, and this deck doesn't because we're playing a janky mana base, even though it's awesome. All right, well, I'll see you guys in round 5. All right, round 5, here we go. Triple Lotus Field Force is not a hand. One thing I'm noticing is I'm not getting enough. This deck feels like Tron Control a little bit, if that makes sense, because it's like I don't seem to get the Lotus Field hand that often. All right. Opponent starts Blood Crypt Swiftspear, hits us for 1. We untap, draw Steam Vents. I'm going to just bolt Swiftspear now, before it becomes a bigger problem. Pass the turn. I'm going to play an Arid Mesa. This could be Burn, but it's more likely Death Shadow. It's the same deck we played, I think, round 1. It is Burn. This is Death Shadow, or this is Luris Burn. I don't think I'm going to Tail's End. So play Steam Vents tapped, pass. I'm going to probably have to shock Steam Vents because I think I have to cast Valakut Awakening here. Opponent suspends Rift Bolt, and Lava Spikes us. We untap and draw Flagstones. We'll play Flagstones, pass the turn, stop on my opponent's upkeep, Path Eidolon. Okay, Eidolon gets exiled. They get a land. Lightning Bolt comes off Suspend. I'm going to Tail's End the actual Suspend trigger here so that it stays permanently exiled. You can't... There's 2 Suspend triggers if you're going to do that. The first Suspend trigger is to take the counter off. When the last counter is removed, they put the second Suspend trigger on, and that's the one that casts it from exile. That is the one you need to counter if you're going to do that. Alright, we get Cryptic Command, Cryptic Command. So shock Steam Vents. Can't say I'm thrilled about this. I don't like shocking my lands versus the deck running this many burn spells. I'm kind of hoping they have to play a haste creature here or something. So they go to combat. They attack us for 2. We take 2 and go to 8. Just put Luris in your hand. Opponent plays a Blood Crypt untapped. Skewers the critics. We go to 5. Okay, they put Luris in their hand. On their end step, go ahead and repulse Eidolon, untap. Draw Tail's End. Play Spire Bluff Canal. Pass the turn. If they cast Lotus, I have to Tail's End. If they cast Eidolon, I have to Cryptic. Counter draw. Okay, we get a Serum Visions. Eidolon number 3. Well, I don't think I can beat Eidolon number 3. Nope. Okay. So this is definitely the time for Madcap Empyrean. I also am going to bring in Aether Gust over Cleansing Wildfire. I think the proactive plan is way worse than the reactive one right now. Tail's End is also not as good here. I potentially want Settle the Wreckage as well. Blood Sun shuts off their fetch lands, but I don't think I can run 3. Cut a Serum Visions. Man, how many cards do I have to cut when I bring this in? Also, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, despite being our primary win condition, is probably not good enough here. Cut like 2 Teferis, a Shark Typhoon, maybe another Blood Sun. Maybe I should go down Blood Sun entirely. Well, I mean, it shuts off their fetch lands, which turns their fetch lands into complete bricks. Tail's End counters Lurrus and a fetch land, and that's it. I'm going to cut the Serum Visions. I don't know how to sideboard for control. What do I look like? An expert? Alright, we're going to play first. I mean, the correct choice was probably to go all the way down onto Teferi. Take them completely out of the deck, that is. This might buy us enough time. So we're going to start Steam Vents tapped. Pass the turn. We do have Force. The problem is Force does not hit creatures. Force would hit a Bump at Night, and that does technically have Flashback, but I don't think that's worth it. Actually, maybe should have forced Bobble, as weird as that sounds. Okay, they're going to Bobble our top deck. It's Cryptic, so they know we have a Cryptic. Play Flagstones, pass the turn. I would flash in Snap just as a blocker here. Opponent plays a Sunbaked Canyon. Opponent plays a Rain of Gore. Do we gain life at all? I don't think we gain life. Does my opponent's deck abuse Rain of Gore in a way that I don't understand? Like, do they have a way to force me to gain a bunch of life? Hang on a minute. Because, like, Rain of Gore is not main deckable. At least to my knowledge. We don't gain life, though. We play Platinum Empyrean. I'm going to let this resolve. This also means if they attack us with Lurrus, it's kind of hilariously bad. Okay, play Snapcaster. We untap. Draw Plains. Nothing to use our mana on, so play Lotus Field. Sack Flagstones, Steam Vents. Flagstone's gonna go get a Triome. Go to combat, hit our opponent for 2. Opponent plays an Arid Mesa, cracks Arid Mesa. Oh shoot, I should turn off auto yields because I have Force of Negation. They get a Mountain. Lava Spike. Okay. Scourge of the Skyclades. Okay. We untap. Draw Blood Sun, which I don't think does anything here. So play Spire Bluff Canal, pass the turn. Actually, do I play Blood Sun? I might be able to protect Snapcaster with Force, but I have to pitch Cryptic. I'm gonna go for this play. It's kind of high risk. Okay, Madcap Experiments. We just have to stay alive for a turn. And then maybe we're okay. If I top deck another Lotus Field, that puts me up to 8 mana, then I could hold up Cryptic plus Madcap, which would be pretty sweet. Okay, chop the Scourge. Opponent plays a land. They put Lotus into their hand. Okay. So we untap. We draw Aether Gust. We have 5 mana, we can go up to 6. Okay. So Madcap. Into an Empyrean. So our life total can't change right now. So my opponent needs a Shattering Spree or a Smash to Smithereens. Opponent untaps. So if my opponent does have artifact removal, we have to use Force of Negation first. Opponent plays a Lurrus of the Dream Den. Sure. They're going to play Mishra's Bauble. I'm going to force pitching Aether Gust. I should be able to protect Empyrean with Cryptic Command. Okay, opponent does not attack. We untap, we draw Spire Bluff Canal. Play Spire Bluff Canal. Pass the turn. Okay, opponent's turn. They play a Bloodstained Mire that they cannot crack. So we're going to just cycle Valakut Awakening here, so we don't have to give up on Cryptic. Okay. Untap. Draw a second Cryptic. Okay. Pass the turn. Oh, we cannot play this as a land? Oh, I'm on my beginning of combat step. I guess if I play Valakut Awakening, I can have double Cryptic. So play Valakut Stoneforge. We're going to have double Cryptic available. Okay. Opponent plays an Arid Mesa. No attacks. On my opponent's end step, we're going to tap their team and draw. We get a Nexus of Fate. Untap. Draw Hallowed Fountain. Play Hallowed Fountain. Go to combat. Attack for 8. If my opponent had an answer, I think they would play it now. And rather than give them the opportunity to draw, I'm going to try taking the extra turn here. This is also much safer because if my opponent had a way to kill Platinum Empyrean, we'd have a whole nother turn to deal with it. Yeah, I still don't think my sideboard makes sense, but I'm not sure what to change it to, so I'm just going to run it back. I know that that logic is, like, insane, but I just don't know what else to do at the moment. We are keeping the Platinum Empyrean. My opponent is definitely bringing in the Smash to Smithereens. I think this hand is too slow. I'm going to mulligan. This hand might work. I'll keep. I'm going to put back Cryptic Command. Opponent starts Arid Mesa, fetch. Find a Blood Crypt and a Goblin Guide. Goblin Guide finds us a Snapcaster Mage. I was really hoping that was a red land. Okay. So, Hallowed Fountain tapped. Pass the turn. Opponent plays a Wooded Foothills. They spike us. Attack us for 2, revealing Valakut Awakening. It's a red land, it's just a very slow red land. So, play an island, pass the turn, and I will Tail's End that Wooded Foothills if my opponent cracks it on my end step. Because mana denial this strong can be very powerful versus burn. It's not all the time, but in a low land count deck, If you can stop their fetches from fetching, could be very good. Okay, opponent plays a mountain, attacks us for 2, revealing a Settle the Wreckage that we will probably never be able to cast. We go down to 11. Opponent untaps, or opponent lets us untap. We will play a Valakut Stoneforge tapped. Pass the turn. And I'm going to flash in Snapcaster to try and block my opponent's Goblin Guide this turn. They bolt us to 8. They bolt us to 5. They untap. They play a land. Second Goblin Guide. You're dead to any burn spell. When it goes to combat, attacks us for 4. We reveal Settle the Wreckage, Settle the Wreckage. Oh, you know what? I had to cycle Shark Typhoon. This doesn't work. Does it? It's less likely to work, I should say. Because we're dead to bolt here, and my opponent has 2 draws next turn to find a bolt. Yeah, opponent had a Skullcrack. So had I cycled, we would have found Flagstones. Yeah, that needed to be a land in their hand, and we needed to cycle Shark Typhoon. That would have given us the 4th land to play Madcap Experiment, and then our opponent would have had to dodge Smash to Smithereens. But that red mana was too slow. The Tail's End wasn't effective enough in this game. And yeah. So we went 1 in 4 with this deck. Let's go ahead and talk about the deck for a second. Okay. Couple of things. Number 1, I really want a 3rd island in this deck for when we go up against Blood Moon. And while I like, I love the Lotus Field Tail's End or the Lotus Field Blood Sun proactive part of this deck, I really dislike how infrequently it occurred. And yeah, I know what you're saying. Kano, you were citing out Serum Visions. You were citing out your consistency tools. You need those in order to play this game in this deck. You're right. That was a mistake. But also, a 2-2 split of Path Lightning Bolt in a deck that, you know, I play, I'm always going to have Path when Bolt would be better. Like, I don't want to give my opponent a land because they missed a land drop, and they probably have something big and scary in hand. And I'm going to have a Lightning Bolt every time my opponent plays a Scourge of the Skyclaves or a Goyf that's an X4 or better. So, I am not a huge fan of this split of removal. Now, a more talented and luckier control player than I am, either one or both, will do better with this deck. This deck is absolutely viable right now, I would say. I would probably swap the numbers around just a little bit in this deck, but I'm not sure exactly how I would do that. Cleansing Wildfire in the main seems to be really good against low basic count decks, but the meta has kind of adapted to that. They're like, any deck that you run up against that's playing Blood Moon is going to be playing enough basics of whatever their off color is if they're not straight mono red, that Cleansing Wildfire is not going to be that great against them. And we're seeing more decks running Blood Moon because of the greedy mana base. I ran into a 4-color deck running Blood Moon the other day, just 2 days ago, or 3 days ago. But the Cleansing Wildfire, I feel, is much better when you have things like Darksteel Citadel in the deck. Like, it's an insane combo with Flagstones, but you're only running 3 Cleansing Wildfire, and you only have 4 Flagstones. And it's kind of a marginal cantrip at best against your opponent. Now, main decking it if you run up against something like Tron is great. But I don't think Tron is that big in the metagame right now, even as much as I regularly play Tron. Blood Sun is also insane, shutting off your opponent's fetch lands. It doesn't shut off the Tron lands, interestingly enough, because their abilities are mana abilities. But every time we played Blood Sun, it felt pretty good. The issue is Blood Sun cost 3 mana, and we kind of didn't want to pay that much mana for it ever. The Teferi Hero of Dominaria and Valakut Awakening plan felt fantastic. I love playing Teferi Hero of Dominaria. Untapping a Lotus Field or 2 Lotus Fields feels insane. Unfortunately, we never drew Shark Typhoon or Nexus of Fate on time to play them. We were always trying to fight in this section of the game, rather than actually make it up here, and that was because we weren't drawing Lotus Field, or we weren't drawing Lotus Field in combination with the Tail's End, or we weren't resolving Tail's End, or we weren't resolving Blood Sun, or we weren't playing Flagstones prior to Lotus Field because we didn't have a Flagstones, or we were stuck playing like 2 Spire Bluff Canals and a Steam Vents, and then we would just die because we didn't want to mulligan low because we're playing a control-y deck. I think this deck has to be finely balanced, because it's playing like, if I were to describe it, it's playing 3 combos to assemble mana. You have Cleansing Wildfire, Flagstones, you have Blood Sun, Lotus Field, and then you have Lotus Field, Flagstones. I guess you also have Tail's End, Lotus Field. So it's playing like 4 mana combos that overlap with marginal utility against different decks. Like Tail's End is good if you're playing against a deck that has a lot of fetch lands and you're not currently doing the Lotus Field thing. Cleansing Wildfire is good against decks like Tron, or occasionally decks that play bounce lands. And Blood Sun's good versus a lot of decks. It just comes down a little bit later, when if this could come down faster, you could shut off your opponent's fetch lands earlier. You might be able to do something. I feel like this deck needs a little bit more removal, because like its top end wants to be late game control, and it's trying to use Lotus Field to skip from early game to late game to play that powerful late game control. But the only times that we really took over the game was when our opponent was basically out of resources anyway. Like the Rakdos mid-range deck we played against, they had the games that we beat them were the games that they didn't play a threat. They thought seized us 8 times, and then we did our little Lotus Field thing, and then we top decked to Fairy, and then we were drawing multiple cards a turn, and then they weren't. And I think even if my opponent had bottomed that one Blood Moon when I Aether Gusted, I actually think my opponent had the chance to beat me in that game because they needed to draw a threat. They just thought Blood Moon was important because I responded with the Aether Gust, which was a mistake, and I capitalized on that mistake. But I don't know. I think this deck is better than I made it look, for sure. I don't think there's any question in that at all. Is this deck meta viable? I'd say it's probably like tier 1.5, tier 2 range in the hands of a good pilot. I kind of, because I didn't play any practice games, I kind of had to learn as I went, and I understand now a few things that I wish I understood when I started. And also, this deck seems to be tuned against the top of the metagame, and when you start off in a tournament, especially a longer tournament, if you lose the first couple rounds, you're going to start playing against decks that this deck is not tuned to beat, which is a concern. Oh, and I should talk about, I think Madcap Empyrean is an absolutely fine sideboard plan for this deck, because like just accelerating really quickly into Empyrean will beat decks like Burn, provided you can also protect Empyrean, which sometimes we could and sometimes we couldn't. Settle the Wreckage is kind of a weird board wipe in this deck, but it's a board wipe that if you tap out for Teferi and then you plus Teferi, you can untap Lotus Field and any other land and have access to Settle the Wreckage, which makes it better in this deck than in other control decks typically. So I'm not a huge fan of Settle the Wreckage. I think it can be used to great effect, but in this deck I like it a little bit better. I like using Cryptic Command as your counterspell because, you know, you're tapping 2 lands to play Cryptic Command. This deck feels like it has too much top end to survive the early game and is not consistently fast enough to get to the top end. But like, it's almost there. It's like right on the cusp of being really good. It's good, but it's right on the cusp of being really good. And I think it just needs a little bit of tweaking. I don't think I'm qualified to make those tweaks. I think the person that built this deck, Aspiring Spike, at least from all of my research, is the person that I found built this deck, is probably way better with it than I am. But that's my opinion. So if you like this video, please leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel if you're so inclined, and remember you can follow me on Twitch, same username over there as you find me on here. I stream Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and hope to see you there. I want you to know that you're all wonderful human beings, and thank you for your viewership and support. Bye!